Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome to the Batcave. We're back over here for a little bit of listing. If somebody could let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. I've been fighting with this setup all morning long. I think I've got it dialed in, but you can let me know in the chat if you can hear me. I didn't have anything particular that I wanted to talk about today, so I thought I would just join you to get some listing done, and we could talk about whatever you want to talk about. Reselling in general. If you have questions about books, I'm going to share my screen with you as I do some listing, for those of you who may not have seen my process when I did this 5 or 6 weeks ago. So that's kind of the plan for today. Jump into the chat here real quick and say some good mornings. Pardon me while I look off to the side. Lord Jake Ryan, good morning. Thanks for coming out. Patrick Kehoe, good morning to all. Jennifer Raybod, good morning. Thanks for coming out. Chuck Witt, good morning from South Carolina. Indeed. Good to see you, Chuck. Appreciate you stopping out. Good. I assume that's for the sound. Thanks, Jen. Hear you well. Good. Good morning, Den Decor Depot. And I can hear. Thanks, Operani. And good morning. So thank you to everybody for coming out. And like I said, if you have anything you want to talk about specifically or things you have questions on in the chat, just drop them in there and we'll try to get to them. I will try to get to them. But in the meantime, let's just start doing some listing. I've got, as my usual, a big tub full of books here. That these are from a estate buyout that I did about 2-3 weeks ago. So these are all books that I'm into for 50 odd cents a piece, I want to say. So some not real expensive stuff to me, but to be fair, I have no idea what's in here. This is a tub I just grabbed out of the garage this morning. So we're going to take a look and see what we got. There's usually some good stuff, and there's usually some chaff to go along with the wheat, but we'll see what we've got. I think I've had one of these before, though I don't recall if it was any good or not. Yeah, maybe. Let's try it without the name. eBay recently changed the app. I don't know if you noticed, but they moved stuff around again in their constant tweaking of the looks of these things. So the main screen has changed a little bit, which is kind of weird. So here we go. Land of All Nations, one for $35. That looks kind of promising. As I talked about previously, I always check when I only see one. I'll go over to Abe Books and look and just see what's going on over there, just to make sure that it's nothing too goofy. Because I have had those occasions where somebody will be trying to sell something on eBay for $60, $70 odd dollars, and it's not worth that. So here's a print on demand. It's $32. Here's what appears to be this exact book for $41 and free shipping, which makes this $35 plus shipping look about right. So I'm going to do probably $34.99 on this. And we'll just do a sell one like this and get started. If you've been following along for a while, you know I try to take at least a dozen pictures of all of the items, capturing at least 6 on the outside and 6 on the inside, so people have a really good idea of what it is they're going to get when this thing shows up at their house. It's one of the reasons I feel like I have really very few returns, although I do have a big one coming back. Someone that bought, it was just in last week's episode, the John Fox book. It was like $124 sale, and she claims she found one cheaper. I offered her a bit of a discount to try to get her to keep it, and she's returning it anyway. So that one's going to be a big bite. That was like a $125 book that's coming back. So that one's going to hurt a little bit, but I will just list it and sell it again. If there are illustrations, I always try to capture the illustrations as well, so people aren't just taking my word for it that it's an illustrated book. This has got a little bit of tanning and foxing. Interesting old bookmark. We'll set that aside for later. Wish it was $100 bill or something, but we'll take what we can get. I'm going to do 14 pictures on this one. Actually, I'm going to do 15. I'm going to take a picture of this because there is some staining on that edge. Since they made this change a few months ago, you got to wait for all the pictures to load before you can finish and go on to the next thing. What is all that? What do we got here? This looks like a 1924. So I'm going to leave that as my title. That'll also go into my description. I'm going to change this actually from books to antiquarian and collectible. It's a 1920s era book. So I feel like that's something that would qualify for that older kind of thing. What is this? This looks like kind of biographies. I'm going to call it historical. That is a long one, so I'm going to just cheat. Paste that in there. It is a hardcover. Looks like biographies and autobiographies. It is illustrated, and you can see here I'm filling out a lot of these item specifics. Even though they're not required, they're just recommended. As far as I know, this is an original. It is from 1924. Where was it published? Usually if it's published somewhere strange, like, not that Cincinnati is strange, but normally they're in New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. I won't bother putting that in. But if it's in a strange, smaller city, or I had one the other day from like Jackson, Illinois, or Jackson, Michigan, I went ahead and put that in because it was a bit more unusual. ISBN does not apply. And then again, I use my custom SKU to say where this is going to be in my warehouse. I've not lost anything recently, knock wood. So I just paste that title into the description. And then I'm going to give a quick description of the condition of the book. I don't talk a lot about what the book actually is. I'm kind of the assumption that less is more on this. Somebody that's looking for this title probably already knows kind of what they're getting. So I'm going to call this acceptable. The cover is actually pretty decent. A little bit of staining, but not a lot of wear. But there is, you can see, there's a little bit of foxing on the pages. They're a little bit tan, so I'm going to leave that in the description just in case anybody reads it. But I'm going to call it acceptable. I tend to err on the side of caution. I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver and have somebody think this is really good than say it's really good and then have them think it's acceptable. And like I said, I'm going to do $34.99 or best offer. I'm going to set my minimum offer of 30. I think that's fair. Have my handy little scale over here. This is about 11 ounces. Should fit in a 10x6 bubble mailer. It's already set up for international shipping, and away we go. That's one down, and let's get back here into the chat and see what we got. When going to an estate sale, how do you decide which books to buy? Do you on-site research or just buy in bulk? So what I'll do is, generally speaking, I will cherry pick the items. I'll go through anything that I think looks like it might have some value, and I'll research it on spot. So I might, depending on how many books are there, I might look at 80, 100, 150 books. I've spent 2 or 3 hours at a sale, and I'll pull the ones I want and load them up in a tub. Generally, I'll try to make an offer on those. If they're asking $2, $3, I'll try to get a little bit of a discount because I'm buying a big number of them. And then if I think that there's some profit to be made in the full collection, I'll leave my card and say, hey, when the sale is done, if you're left with a bunch of books that you'd really like to make a good deal on, I will come up, I'll pack them up, take them off your hands for you at a good price. And that's how this tote came about. I bought some books at the sale. After the sale was over, they called me and said, hey, if you want to come out and get these, we've got a couple of hundred books left. I bought them for about $100, so 50 cents a piece. And right there's a $35 book, the first one I've done. So that's kind of my process. I will cherry pick the ones I want. If there's nothing really cool left there or that I think will be worth messing with, I'll just leave it alone. Otherwise, I'll leave my card and make an offer. I enjoy these Batcave sessions. Thanks for all you do to make this happen. Absolutely, my pleasure. It's a little different. It's a nice little change. Allows me to get a little bit of work done instead of just talking. Bulk offers is broken with yesterday's eBay app update. Awesome. I did not experience that problem. I did a bunch of offers this morning, so maybe it's fixed. Is that just on the app or on the web? I did the web this morning. I did do some on the mobile last night and didn't have any problem. So it seems like their app updates don't always come across very well. Particularly, I'm on Android. When they did, there was something that they did that they made an update in order to do product research, the old Terapeak. I had to actually uninstall and reinstall the app, even though it said I was updated to the most recent version. So there's something going on with their updater that is also not great. Notice you don't have a measuring tape in your photos. I do not. I don't measure the books unless it's a particularly small, like a pocket-sized book, then I will. I get a handful of requests a month where someone will ask what the dimensions of the book are, and then I'll go measure it for them when I'm over in the warehouse next time. But that's not something I take the time to do for these individual books. Maybe I should, but it's just, I haven't found it to be a major issue. Like I said, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, somebody will ask for measurements. Yeah, that's a remorse return. Been there, resold that. Yeah, I agree. That's a funny one because they bought it and paid for it. And 10 minutes later, I got a question about the book. And 10 minutes after that, I got another question about the book. And then I got a question about the dimensions of the book. So it happened to be here because it was a more valuable book. I store those here on site. I don't take them to the warehouse. So I came downstairs and I measured it and I sent the dimensions, and the buyer apologized for asking so many questions. I said, totally understand. This is an expensive item. Want to make sure you get it right. This was a Saturday. I said, you've got a couple of days. If you decide you don't want it, cancel it by 7 a.m. Monday morning, and no harm, no foul. Well, they didn't cancel it. They got it yesterday, and almost immediately upon getting it, they requested a return. It is what it is. What's the most interesting thing you found in a book? I have found like a lot of just other sellable items. Like I was going through a book the other day, and stuck in it was like a small pamphlet that turned out to be worth about $20 by itself. So a lot of stuff like that, where someone will just stick something in as a bookmark. I found all kinds of additional sellable items like this. This is a solid bronze dainty bookmark and letter opener from Hammond Publishing. It's etched and enameled. It's got an image. I don't know if you can see it. This camera is not real great. Little woman's face on there. This is something that I'll look up later. It's got a name written on the back. This might have some value. It's essentially free to me because I didn't know it was in there. So if it's worth $8 or $10 plus shipping, that's a nice little find. Money-wise, the most money I've ever found in a book was a $20 bill. So I'm not one of those that has, unfortunately, bought an estate lot and found money in every single book, because I know some people will. Sometimes older people will put money in books. Unfortunately, that has not been my experience. Even if it was, I would probably contact the estate seller where I bought that lot and see how they wanted to handle it. just as a goodwill gesture. If you were on my show on Monday, I did a similar kind of thing. I sent out an offer, and simultaneously the buyer was sending me an offer, which canceled my offer. My offer was actually cheaper, and I reached out to him and said, hey, I'll still do my offer. He'd actually never seen my offer. So I probably could have got away with it, but I just feel like it's the right thing to do. Chuck Witt, you can return a book because they found one cheaper. They're honest, but that should not be a reason after they committed to the sale. I offer free 30-day returns, so I will take anything back for any reason. That gives me the top-rated plus seller discount. For this month, it's not going to pay off because I'm going to lose more money probably in shipping that book back and forth. Then I'll save in fees, but by and large, that's been a better program for me. But I do offer free 30-day returns for any reason. So even if it's a remorse return, and to be fair, my returns are super, super low. I've had 2, I think, this quarter. So in the last 3 months, just 2 returns on, gosh, maybe 1,200 items sold. My return percentage is less than 0.5%. It's like 0.35 or something like that. So it's not been a big deal for me. But yeah, we'll see. I did block that person. I talked a few weeks ago. I did an episode on this on the live about blocking, and that's one, because of the way that whole transaction went down. They bought the item, then they had a bunch of questions, then they asked for a return, then they declined an offer to match or beat the price that they supposedly found on another one, which I don't believe they found another exact copy of that book because it was a really unusual 2-volume in 1 edition. So that whole thing was sketchy. So I did block that person. Den Decor, top-rated seller plus. To get discounted eBay fees, you have to take the returns no matter the reason. Absolutely. So what is foxing? Okay, so show you again. So it's probably kind of hard to see, but all those little tan blotches, you can see the page overall is not white anymore. It's got what they call tanning. So it's a little bit discolored. But these little blotches, these aren't really bad. But that's called foxing. It's generally age and moisture related. A lot of times you'll see it, particularly, these are pretty clean. A lot of times on the plates, on old plates, the photos will have foxed real bad because that's a different kind of paper. In this case, they are actually super clean. So no problems there. But yeah, almost every page has some level of foxing on it. So, but that's what that is. See it mostly again on older books, and particularly if they've been stored in a basement or somewhere where there's a little bit of moisture. Sissy Moore, good morning. Made it to do some listing. I've only gotten 1 done so far, so hopefully you're doing better than I am. Joanna Shear, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Black Cat Flips, good morning. Thanks for stopping by. Patrick Kehoe, thank you. Thank you. App on iOS. Okay, and that might be the case because sometimes things work or don't work differently on the different apps. You said it was bulk offers, right? Let's for fun, let's just do this and see if I have any in here. So I have send offers to buyers. And mine appears to be working. So here you're just going to see, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do all the ones that are full price, which ends there. Send offers. I always send out 15% on items that are not on sale. Review offer. It's those 4 items. Send offer. Seems to be working on Android. Just go ahead and do these other ones. While we're in here, there's a good one. Inside the Aquarium, the making of a top Soviet spy. Had it listed for $124.99. It's on sale right now for $106.24. They're going to get an offer for another 10% off. So we'll see how that goes. That would ease the pain a little bit of the one that's coming back. Sometimes I change the message. Since there's a particular big one here, I'm going to do this. for a limited time. Save an additional 10% off the sale price. Don't miss it. I sent 17 offers first thing this morning. That's another 7, so I've sent 24. I probably send 30 to 35 offers a day that generates maybe a couple of sales. So it's a really low take rate. As you're all aware, a lot of the people that are watching items or that have popped into an item multiple times are other sellers doing research. So a lot of this is spinning the wheels, but it only takes a couple minutes to do. And if you get even a couple of sales a day out of it, it's probably worth your time. For clothing, questions are the kiss of death. They never buy. That's why I'm transitioning to collectibles. It's one of the reasons I've talked about in my regular podcast. I rarely sell clothes. Every now and then, I'm okay with hats. If I find some old vintage concert t-shirts, I'll take a chance on those. But yeah, the measurements thing. Number one, I've got this giant tub. I've got probably 1,500, maybe 2,000 books currently to be listed. I've got too much stuff to do to spend the time measuring a bunch of clothing for something that I'm just not particularly interested in selling myself. I understand there are people that make a killing doing it, and that's one of the things that you almost have to do, especially women's clothing. Sizing is not consistent across brands. So a size 6 in one may equate to an 8 or a 4. So you almost have to measure everything and show it in your photos. And it's not something I'm personally interested in doing for my business. So I pretty much avoid clothing as well. Brandy, thanks for coming out. My Reseller Treasure. Good to see you. How was the weather down there? You guys had that hurricane hanging around for a couple of days, dumping a bunch of rain in your area, didn't you? Den Decor, I found pretty spicy 1940s love letter in a book. Still no money though, but books aren't my main course. Yeah, I found a lot of like notes, and I'm going through a big bunch of books from an estate where the children and the grandchildren of the person who passed had given a lot of old vintage and antique books as gifts, and they had put personal notes in all of the books about why they were giving this particular gift and so on. So those were kind of interesting to just take a quick look at and read. Books that previous family members maybe had owned or read that they wanted to share with this person. It was kind of interesting. Those probably don't really have any value, but it was interesting to see as I went through them. Better Health Blessings. Good morning, Brandon, Media Picker. I'm here. It's been a day from heck with the full-time job, maybe going full-time with eBay sooner than I think. Man, I feel that. Although to be fair, it's been a rough day here as well. So it's not always perfect. As a full-time reseller, I've talked about it before, but since you brought it up, it probably bears repeating. Doing this full-time probably isn't for everybody. There's a certain mental makeup that you've got to have. Commission sales, be it car sales or anything else, is kind of the same way. Know your strengths and know what your risk tolerance is before you make a decision to go full-time. If you're the kind of person that is more comfortable having that steady weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is, paycheck, and the idea of not knowing from week to week how much money you're going to make or how many sales you're going to make can be really stressful. I was in commission sales clear back in the 80s and kind of established that kind of mental attitude that if I had a bad day today, I'd have a good day tomorrow, and just was able to get through that. But I've seen people who are really, really terrific business people, great heads on their shoulders, terrific personalities, would be fantastic at sales, but just couldn't get past that mental hurdle of not knowing at the end of the week how much money they were going to have, and got inside their own heads and really freaked themselves out. And that kind of becomes a downward spiral. You start stressing, so you try to cut corners, you try to do things too fast, you start making mistakes, and things can go bad really, really quickly. So if I had one piece of advice for you as a potential full-time seller, it would be know whether you're comfortable with I put a post up, I think it was on Instagram a few weeks ago, with the roller coaster, where I had these huge spikes where I had really terrific sales and then down in the dumps for 3 or 4 days, and then another nice spike. And being able to know mentally that at the end of a week or the end of a month, those things are going to balance out is really important for your mental health, not to mention your financial health. Den Decortivo, thank you for that. I'd never heard of that. I assume you're talking about the foxing. Yeah. Black Cat Flips, I'm listening at work again. Listening on my break times. Good, good. Appreciate that. I won't say a word. Mary McQueen, good morning. Thanks for coming out. My Reseller Treasure, great to know. I was sure there was a term for the page edging discoloration. Thanks for the info. I'm here to serve, my friends. Sissy Moore's also got one listing done. I'm sorry if I'm distracting you with all this information. Mine all had $0 for the offer price. Interesting. I wonder what's going on with that. It's eBay. We'll just leave it there. Judith R, selling for 6 months, bought old books years ago, researched one small book written in a foreign language, found 2 listed, one on Amazon, $2,000. Congratulations. I've never had anything over $500, and I've been doing this for 5 years. As a newer seller, not books, how can I list and protect? Thank you. Fill me in a little more on what that question is. How do you mean, how can you list? And what do you mean by protect? Do you mean protect the item when you shipped, or do you mean protect yourself from potential scams or returns or whatnot? Give me a little more detail on that. Chuck Witt, give you credit for doing listings on your phone. I do all mine on my laptop. I just can't do details typing on a phone keyboard. As you may have noticed, I'm not very good at it either. I need those keys to be a lot bigger. At 58, almost 59 years old, my fingers don't work like they used to. And I mistype a bunch of stuff. And interestingly, it seems like autocorrect only fixes things that I've actually typed in correctly, but are just weird spellings of things. Things I want it to correct, it doesn't do. So there you go. It would really slow me down. Again, the first time I did this, I kind of showed the process, and because we've only done one listing here in almost 30 minutes, you've only seen it one time, but having my stuff here, my photo booth, my scale, my box with inventory labels, all kind of within sitting distance, it's just kind of an assembly line process for me. So I would be faster probably on an actual keyboard as well. But on balance, to take the pictures and then have to keep track of where the item is and what information I want to put in, it would just add more steps to this process for me. So despite my discomfort with the mobile app at times, this process for me just works better. Given the number of listings I'm trying to do in a day, this is just a much more convenient way for me to do them. But I absolutely understand why people do not like listing on the mobile. Not to mention, there are some things that are available on desktop that are not available on mobile. So there's that as well. Kaylee Debs, good morning. Good morning. Liz joining us. Good morning, all. Good to see you. Are you on your walk, Liz? Kapow Eagle, since eBay limits how many offers you can send once you send an offer, how do you get around that? I have not ever run into that. And like I said, I will send 30, 40 at a pop. Especially on a Monday morning. If I haven't done any offers over the weekend, I might have 40 or 45 items. I don't know what the cap is. I don't know if that cap varies. If anybody else knows, let us know in the chat. I'd be happy to broadcast that to everyone. I don't know what the cap is and if it varies by how long you've been selling, what your seller status is, how many listings you have. I've not come across an instance where I have not been able to send out an offer. My Reseller Treasure, yeah, Debbie pushed her way through our area. My corn garden took a bit of a beating, and I could have done without all that rain, but overall, it was fine. Good, glad to hear. I was thinking about you. I almost sent you a message on Instagram when I saw that you were going to get a lot of rain down there. Den Decor, you have to be strict in continuing to push and saving when times are good to get through the slow times. Yes, I talked about that. I don't know if it was a week or two ago, about trusting your process and knowing that you're doing the right things. And of course, there may be things you need to tweak. You may need to run a sale. You may need to do promoted listings. There may be things that you need to change here and there, given a time of year like summer slowdown. But if you've established a process that works, kind of like my listing process here, stick with it and trust in that process. Don't never stop learning, and find better ways to do things if possible. But just keep pushing through and have that confidence in yourself and in what you're doing, and understanding the business, understanding that there is seasonality, that the summer is not going to be as good as Q4 unless you happen to sell summer merchandise rather than holiday gift type merchandise. So my business is a prime example. I do better in January typically than I do in December. The only thing I can put that down to is that selling vintage books, that's a hard item probably to gift. How do you know what book grandma wants? But if she gets a gift card, whether it's to eBay or Etsy or just a generic Visa gift card, and then she knows she needs one last Edna Ferber book to complete her Western collection, she finds that book and buys it. That's the only thing I can assume, but my Januaries historically are significantly better than my Decembers. And as a new seller, that's really hard to know, that there are those seasonal things. And that's where following other people on Instagram, following seasoned sellers on YouTube, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, will give you that information to say, hey, this happens every year. Don't panic. Don't freak out. Just keep doing your thing and life will be fine. Den decor, slow times, you take some offers you might not otherwise take, and the good times, hold to your prices. Yep, I will do that. And it's one of the reasons I set minimum offers for my items. I know a lot of people don't like to do that. Again, I'm coming up real quickly on 11,000 listings. I just don't want to deal with a bunch of lowball offers where I have to, even if I just ignore it, I don't want to have to look at it. If I've got, like the one I just did, a $35 book that I feel like I don't want to accept less than $30 on, if somebody offers me $29, I'm not going to see it. Would I have taken that? Maybe, but when you multiply that by 3 million views a month or whatever I'm getting and all the potential offers that come in, that's just a decision I've made for my business. I set minimum acceptable offers pretty much on everything. I'm literally not getting any listing done. Judith R, conditions, etc. Assume you're talking about like item specifics. Fern Flips, good morning. Thanks for coming out. We're getting a glimpse into your work area. Yes, this is the dreaded Batcave. It's in a bit of a state of disarray. I've got several boxes of stuff here that I'm working on. I talked about this when I was here before. This is a shelf of kind of higher value inventory that I don't leave over in the warehouse. And then over on my other shoulder, you'll see like broken down boxes. Those are recycled boxes that I cut up for stiffeners when I ship paperbacks or lighter weight items. I will just recycle that cardboard and cut out whatever the item size is, so that when it goes in the bubble mailer, it's got a little bit of extra. So it looks like chaos over there, but there is a method to the madness. Liz, no walks today. My old girl is sick and resting. Sorry to hear that. If you follow me over on Instagram, you know I got a dog. A week ago today, Salsa is her name. The vet thinks she is a pit bull hound mix of some sort. She is so good, but I had to take her to the vet because she is having what I think is a UTI. So she's on the meds already. Hasn't affected her friskiness very much, but Kapow Eagle, do you adjust prices for names in books? I assume you mean like if the owner has written their name in the book rather than the book is autographed. And I consider that as I'm evaluating the condition of the book. So most times, anytime there's writing in the book, I won't grade it higher than acceptable. Now, I will put in the description something to the effect it is in acceptable condition because of some underlining or some handwriting or whatever, but is otherwise in very good condition with minimal shelf wear and pages are clean and crisp, or whatever the description is. But if there's writing anywhere in the book, for me, that almost always downgrades it to acceptable condition. If there's an autograph, if the item has been signed by the author, I may try to get a little bit more money for that, but it's very difficult to verify the authenticity of those autographs. I assume nobody's tried to pull one over. This come from an estate collection. It's probably a legitimate autograph. There are times where the author will have done a bunch of book signings, and there'll be even a sticker on the front of the book that says author signed. That way you can know pretty confidently that that was the case. I did an estate buy recently where this family owned a bunch of books by the same writer. I assume he was a friend of the family, and he had inscribed all of them with like a gift inscription to whoever it was, Margaret and Johnny. Thanks for your support, and signed the book. I can feel pretty confident because there were like 10 or 15 of those, but those are all legit. And I might try to get a little bit more money for those. So I hope that answers your question. Liz, your new rescue girl is so cute. She is. Somebody stopped me. I was walking her last night and said, that is a really cute dog. So she's been pretty awesome. Very glad I did it. I've been debating getting a dog for probably over a year and finally pulled the trigger on it last week. So that looks like the end of the questions in chat. So I'm going to do another listing. So let's get back here and do this again. We might get a whole 2 done. I think I did 5 last time. I'm going to have a hard time getting to 5, I think, today. All right, we've got The Complete Life by Reverend L.H. Shue, PhD. Older book, never heard of this guy, never heard of this book. Here's one like we just talked about. So here, this has a gift inscription. Sometimes that's helpful, like this one, Christmas 1927. So if this book does not have, now in this case it does, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, it does have a copyright printing date in it, but a lot of times older books will not have a date in them, and having a gift inscription helps you a little bit to date the book, and I will use that. And again, I'll talk about in the description, there's no date in the book, but it does have a gift inscription of 1927, which is how I've dated it. So that kind of stuff can be useful. This is one, again, the pages are pretty clean. There's no real foxing. Cover's in really good shape. So I would say I'm going to call this acceptable because, again, it's got some writing in it. But in the description, I will describe the physical condition of the book as good, if that makes sense. This will go in as an antique book. So those don't actually have a place in item specifics for condition. I don't know why that is the case, but that's what we'll describe when we get in there. So let's look this bad boy up and see what we got here. I feel like I've had one of these before, but I currently have listed about 11,000 books. I've got another 1,500 or 2,000 in the garage, and over the last almost 5 years, I've sold 22,000. So I've cycled through a lot of books. So a lot of times I'll see something, I'm like, that looks familiar to me. This might be too much information to get. All right, let's try it with just... So nothing from that. Make sure I got that spelled right. So let's go back to my friends over at Abe Books. See what we find over there. As you witness my inability to type. So there's one for $11. Published by Albrecht in Toledo, Ohio in 1927, which is exactly what this book is, if I remember correctly. Albrecht Printing Company from 1927. So $10.98 plus $5.99 shipping. That's a little high on shipping. This is probably less than £1, I'm going to guess. So media rate is going to be $4.63. So I'm going to price mine $10.99 or best offer and run with that. So since there isn't one, I got to do it the hard way. I've actually got to create a listing. Do a little bit of extra work, but that's all right. And again, same thing. I'm going to take a bunch of photos. And obviously, this is a process that works very well for media, books, CDs, records, DVDs, Blu-rays, that sort of thing. I'm not sure you could do this exact process for clothing that you'd want to hang or put on a mannequin or do whatever. So some of this process is not super helpful for everybody kind of across the board, but so again, I take a picture of what's written there. I usually don't take a picture of the half title page, but I will do the full title page and the copyright page. And then just samples of a few pages throughout. Doesn't appear to be any illustrations in this. It's taking forever to load these photos. That looks like everything I need. So I'm going to call this religious. It talks about how to live a complete life, but it makes references pretty regularly to prayer, blessing, God. So we're just going to call this a religious book. It is a hardcover. We're going to call it Religion and Spirituality. It asks for special attributes. If there are illustrations or anything like that, that's what I would put there. But there are not anything there, so that's one I will just leave blank. I talked about that a week or two ago. Filling in all the item specifics just for the act of filling them all out, I don't believe that's necessary. That's one that doesn't apply. There are no special attributes, so I'm just going to leave that blank. Appears to be original. It was published in Toledo, which again, not a real common place for a book to be published, so I'm going to put that in there. Printed in 1927. There is no ISBN. And again, I've talked about that all the time. Even if there was an ISBN, I probably wouldn't use it because it will change all the information I just put in to match what's in eBay's catalog, most of which is probably not right. Is that too harsh on eBay? It is what it is. So again, I've done these enough that it's got auto-stored a lot of the words I use. So condition is acceptable with a gift inscription, otherwise in good condition with minor shelf wear and light tanning of pages. That is a very fair description of what this book looks like. The feedback that I get from buyers on the descriptions is almost universally positive. So going to a lot more detail than that seems counterproductive. It's just time spent for no real benefit. If there was something specific, if there was a page that was damaged, torn, whatever, a particularly bad stain, anything like that, I would highlight it in addition to that kind of generic description, but that's generally where I will leave that. Again, we're going to do $10.99, not a big money thing, but again, I'm into it for 50 cents, so not too bad. I will say $8 on this is the least I would want to take. Let's see how I am with my weight. I said it was under a pound. It's 12 ounces. It is going to get wrapped in paper, so I always add an ounce to what is on the scale there. So we'll call it 13. That will likely also fit in a small bubble mailer. And there's number 2 done for the morning. Let's get back over here into the chat. And we did that one and that one. Black Cat Flips. How much writing is too much? I had a book recently that it would have been good, but they had underlined what seemed to be every other line. If I find more than a word underlined, I'm going to grade it acceptable and explain why. I did one yesterday. I flipped through the entire book. I found underlining on one page, and I still called it acceptable with a minimal amount of underlining. And I took a picture of that page, and then just acceptable, otherwise in good physical condition with whatever modest shelf wear and whatever the page condition is. But if there is writing in the book, most buyers consider it to be acceptable only if there's any writing in it. So that I always, again, I err on the side of caution. I will make a description of what's right about the book in addition, but if there's any writing, for me, it's acceptable. I would not, even if it had highlighting and notations throughout, I wouldn't not sell it. If that's kind of the gist of the question, I've sold books all the time that like every other page is highlighted, underlined, there's notes in the margin. I'm fine with that. Particularly old Bibles. You'll find that a lot in Bibles. I will go ahead and offer that item for sale with, again, a lot of photos of what's going on and a fair description of why I've graded it the way I have. Thank you for all the item specifics you share. Love listening to you. Thank you. Your voice is awesome and easy to listen to. It probably sounds better in the main studio than it does on this $9 mic, but I appreciate that very much. Always learn something I didn't know. And I appreciate that. I talk about all the time. That's why I do these. If I get one comment that says I learned something new today, it makes it worthwhile. Lindy Moo, good morning. How do you determine antique? eBay is pretty. I saw a book the other day from the year 2002 that the seller had put into the antique and collectible category. Because they have that category as antique and collectible, they leave you a ton of latitude in how you decide to classify the book. Generally, for me, 2002, unless it is a 1 of 500 printed, that puts it definitely into the collectible category. I would not put it in that category. I would list it as a book. Anything maybe mid 1980s or older, I might put into the antique or collectible, because you're getting into more vintage. There's no vintage category. There is item specifics for vintage paperbacks and that, but there's not a category for vintage where theoretically a lot of those things would fall. If you look at Etsy and you go to theirs, I think it's 2004. I could be wrong on that, but it's well into the 2000s now at this point, where they still allow you to sell vintage items, and it's essentially 20 years old. I think a lot of true antique and vintage dealers would tell you that it really needs to be older than that to qualify as vintage or antique. But on these platforms, by and large, that kind of seems to be the number. Anything 20 odd years old or older, you could probably get away with. I'm a little more cautious with antique books on eBay in particular, mid 1980s, but certainly anything in the 70s or before, I'm going to put in the antique and collectible category. Thank you for the question. Gem setting girl. Hi, glad to finally make a live stream. I'm still a newbie with 12 items sold. Congratulations. We all started somewhere. The longest journey begins with one step. 12 items sold is very good. Most of my sales have been on a best offer. Like you, I do set an amount for a lowest offer though. Yeah, if you know you're not going to take, and again, I'll make the counter argument just to do it. I saw somebody that talked about it once. You are, like I mentioned earlier, you're missing some opportunities that might be $1 below the minimum that you set. But if that minimum is legitimately your floor, do you want to take that offer, or should you lower your minimum acceptable offer? Well, okay, I really want 30, but I would take 25. So set it at 25. I suppose it depends on how you really feel about what your minimum acceptable offer is. For me, that's kind of a hard number for a new listing. Now, I talk about pretty regularly, anything that's been in my store for more than a year goes on a clearance sale every month at some level of discount. So once it's been in my stock for a year, then I start discounting them and the offers will adjust from there. But yeah, I always set that lowest offer. In terms of offers, I would guess maybe 30 or 40% of my sales are on offers that either I sent or came back to me. 60 to 70% are still full price offers, which blows me away. I had one this morning. It was a $50 book that I was thinking in my head while I was shipping it. I'm surprised that person didn't make an offer, whatever, 10% off or something, because they're clearly labeled or best offer. But a remarkable number of people do not make offers. They just find the thing they want. It looks like a fair price. I think that's one of the advantages, and I could be wrong on this, of creating really good listings, lots of photos, pretty good description, so people know exactly what it is they're getting. That gives you kind of a leg up over even some of these massive booksellers who don't even have a photo of the item up and have a really super, even more generic description than what I'm using about the book that basically talks about them and their policies or whatever. If I'm at $15 and that guy's at $13, I will probably sell mine versus that, because there are 12, 13, 14 photos. I know exactly what it is as a buyer that I'm going to get. And that gives you the opportunity to make a little bit more money, if that makes sense. And I think that's why a lot of times people don't make offers. They see a listing, it's a good listing, they know exactly what it is, they can tell from the photos, and they just don't want to mess with it either. They'll just buy it for the price. So Kapow Eagle, do you do all your listings solo, and do you ever use a virtual assistant? I do everything myself. I spent, for those of you not familiar with my background, 30 plus years in retail management, customer service, sales. To be completely fair, I'd had enough of trying to get other people to do things to the same level of care and diligence that I would do them. So I do everything myself. I source, I photograph, I list, I clean, I pack, I ship, I do it all. I am a one-man operation by choice. I get asked from time to time. I posted in a Facebook group, somebody asked the question about how many listings the people in the group had up, and I posted mine up, and I got like 3 or 4 messages almost right away. Gosh, do you need a VA? Because you feel like with that many listings, it would probably be helpful. But no, I do not. I do everything myself. Operating on eBay, I've been cropping my photos. Is that overkill? I suppose it depends on the item. I do everything in the square 1x1 format, and as you saw, if you were watching there, try to get as close to it as I can, so that's the dominant thing in the photo, with very little on the edges. So there's not much left for me to crop. Again, depends on the item, depends on your background, whether you would want to crop or not. For these type of items, I also don't use a background removal tool. I've got a nice white background here surrounded by white reflective poster board, so I get good lighting, get a really nice image. So I don't do any of that either. Den Decor Depot, that happens with UPCs on Hot Wheels cars. They all get does not apply. Yeah, I know sometimes UPC numbers get reused, but the catalog on eBay really, really is rough. And again, I try to, I always say, you know, I love eBay. If you're listening, I love you. I allow me to make the living that I make doing what I do. But some of the stuff, in the instance where I do scan a barcode and I get into the item specifics and some of them are wrong, if you make an edit, that removes the ISBN number from your listing. And then you get a warning that says you have to have an ISBN number. If you rescan that same ISBN number, it changes all the information you just edited back to what they have in their catalog tied to the ISBN, which you just fixed because it was wrong. That's why I don't use them. I want my information in my listing to be accurate. I don't want to put myself at risk for taking a return because my book was published in 2006, but the ISBN returned something from 2002 or 2010 or whatever the case may be. It's really bad with various editions, revisions, books that have been printed multiple times, but may or may not have the same UPC, but there's no way to edit to put the correct information in without losing that ISBN number in the listing. So that's why I don't use it. I feel like I rant on that way too much, but it's a real problem for eBay. Operating on eBay. So you enter amount for least amount offer you'll consider, but you also enter an amount for auto accept. I don't. But generally speaking, if I get the offer, I just accept it. I don't counter offer. I suppose you could do that, just auto accept at $30 and do it that way. But that's just the way I've chosen to do it, is to auto decline lower offers. I don't know if you have, I guess you would probably see all those lowball offers. So if you did auto accept at $30 and somebody offered $5, you'd get that offer. And I don't know, I don't think you can set both, at least on the mobile. I don't know if you can do that on desktop. If somebody does know that, they can answer that in the chat, but I don't think you can do that. Den Decor Depot, vintage is 20 years, antique is generally 80 to 100. There you go. Busy Girl, good morning. Caught your live. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. Operating on eBay. Had a full price sale on a book that I'd gotten an offer on that morning. I'm wondering if the full price buyer saw an alert on the listing page that someone else made an offer. I have noticed on the mobile app recently, there's a lot more effort by eBay to create urgency, like last one in stock or that kind of verbiage. The mobile app, frankly, is really getting cluttered as a buyer. There is so much stuff on there right now. But I've had that. I had an instance over the weekend where I was out on my walk and someone sent an offer. I saw the notification on my watch. I was like, okay, I'll take care of that when I get back. And I don't know if the buyer got nervous that maybe I wasn't going to accept the offer. But even before I got home, which was 30 minutes, they had just gone ahead and bought the thing at full price. So sometimes it pays to not respond immediately to an offer because either another buyer will swoop in and offer more or buy it at full price, or that person may get a little antsy if they really want the thing and they're trying to save a couple of bucks and then they realize, nope, I really want this. I'm not going to take the chance on missing it. And then they'll go ahead and buy it at full price themselves. So there's something to be said for not accepting offers like right away. Busy Girl, what do you put there? Does not apply. Let me go back and see if I can find your question. Help me out. What were you referring to there? If it's an item specific that doesn't apply, generally I leave it blank. For ISBN, there is, if you open the ISBN, I'll show you on the phone here in a second, there is a place where you can actually click a slider that says does not apply, and then that will fill that in and not publish that information to eBay. I think that's what you're asking about. Yes, I've been entering amounts for minimum and I enter amount for auto accept. Are you doing that on desktop or mobile? I've never looked on mobile. It seems like it washes that out. Does not, yes, Den Decor Depot does not apply, will be trumped by 10 correct item specifics in search. Landshop Pricker, good morning. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out. Let's do one more listing here. We're at an hour. If you've got other questions, this is where I usually like to try to wrap it up. We'll do one more listing so you can kind of see what I was just talking about with that ISBN issue. All right. Here's a vintage book, Hell's Angels by the historic, legendary Hunter S. Thompson. So you can see here, let me do this, sorry. Here's a bunch with no photos, bunch of paperbacks. I'm going to filter my search. Let's do hardcovers. It says there's 25 of those. These all have a different cover. Here's one that's probably mine, but it doesn't have a dust jacket. So here's the first one with a dust jacket, $100. That's pretty inspiring. Let's filter this again and look at some solds just for giggles, because that seems high to me. So again, that's the same book, but without the dust jacket. So here's one, looks almost identical to mine, sold for $40. So there's listings for $100, but there's solds at $40. Let me know in the chat, what would you do here? $39.99 plus shipping, $45 plus shipping, $50, $45, $48, $50. We're up to $60. $90, $99, $122. So there's a pretty good range there. I'm going to do my Abe Books search here again, just for giggles, and see what we got. And let's filter. I just want used. Whoops, not soft cover. With a dust jacket. Let's see. So here we go again, $27.50. And then we're into some pretty expensive ones, $75 and $85. So given that, let's get out of the solds here. 25, but no dust jacket, 1967. When was this? This is a book club edition, so that's going to hurt it a little bit. This is also 1967. That's a book club edition for $100. I'm not going to go to $100 on this. I'm going to see if anybody commented in the chat before I tell you where I'm going to go with this one. Yes, I assume that's on the ISBN question, and we'll get there. Desktop, okay, yeah. That's something that I don't think we'll check it here in a minute. I don't think you could do that on mobile. Kapow Eagle, thanks. I'm on my way to a private estate sale pick. I love those. Use many of your ideas and info has worked very well for me. Please keep up the great work. Thank you, and good luck at your sale. Hope you get some good scores. Sissy Moore, thank you. I'm terrible at reminding people about this. Don't forget to click the thumbs up before you leave. If you enjoyed it, thumbs up for another awesome hour. Thank you. I appreciate that. You did get 5 listings up. I'm jealous. I'm going to get 3 here. So nobody said anything about where they would probably list this in terms of price. I'm going to split the difference between kind of the low end of 40 and the high end here of 100. I'm going to do $74.99 or best offer. I'm going to have a fairly low best acceptable offer on this one, though, probably like $50, just to see what happens here. So I'm going to use this listing as an example. And again, I'm going to sell one like this. Chuck, wait, wouldn't you look at the condition of the dust jackets in the sold listings? I did kind of just glance at them as I was fanning down through. I know already this one is acceptable. This dust jacket is pretty rough. It's got some damage at the top of the spine. So this is not one that I would consider to be in great condition. To be fair, most of the ones that I saw as I was kind of just scanning through also didn't look to be in great condition. I didn't see anything there that looked like a pristine version of this book. So Denzicor Depot running a 15% off sale. So I'd be $69.99 or best offer on that book. Kind of right in the range where I'm headed. Minimum $49. You read my mind. Big Dre, good morning. You just woke up. Man, I wish I could sleep that late. I was awake at 5:30 this morning. I just can't. That's old man thing, I think. I just can't sleep anymore. All right, so let's get my photos in here. And you can see as I'm taking these, see there's quite a bit of damage over here on the side. It's not in terrible shape, but it's not great. This is a book club edition. When I find those, generally it will say down here in the corner that it's book club edition. I will always take a photo of that. We have a name written in here, so I'm going to take a photo of that. I am also going to take a picture of the book outside of its dust jacket to show the condition of the actual book in case somebody wants to display it that way, since that dust jacket is a little on the rough side. And again, I'm going to do our title page, copyright page, and then just some sampling of kind of random pages throughout. I'm not seeing any illustrations. Doesn't look like. We'll do a couple more here. Always look at the backboard just to make sure there's no damage there. The app is so inconsistent about how long it takes to download photos. So strange. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. eBay says specifically they do not like all caps in their listings, so I'm going to change this. A lot of people, again, like here, they leave extra spaces or they put in little squigglies and just random symbols. For me, you're just wasting real estate if you do that. So Hell's Angels, Hunter S. Thompson, 1967 book club edition, HCDJ hardcover with its dust jacket. This is Random House. I'm going to put that in there as well. So that I use 76 of my 80 characters. Good for me. We're going to copy that. This is in books. I'm just going to leave it in books. I'm going to call it acceptable because that dust jacket is super rough. So here we are again on this title page. ISBN is blank. This does not have an ISBN, but you can see in the upper, if you're on the mobile, at least on Android, in the upper right-hand corner, there's this little slide box where you can click for do not apply, does not apply, and then that will fill that in. I see a lot of people that just type NA or does not apply or whatever in that field. I suppose that's acceptable, but because they have that little slider there, I just use that and let it fill in by itself. So here's one. The title is actually incorrect. It's only off by a word. Is that a big deal? Probably not, but it's one of those things. I'm a nerd for this stuff. The title of this book with the subtitle is Hell's Angels, A Strange and Terrible Saga. This person has it listed as Hell's Angels, no apostrophe in Hell's, and The Strange and Terrible Saga instead of what it actually is. So I'm going to change it, and you can let me know in the chat. Am I crazy for being that paying that much attention to those things? But again, I err on the side of caution. I'd rather have it be as accurate as I can get it. Do I make mistakes from time to time? We all do, absolutely. But if I catch something like that, I definitely want to fix it. They have topic as the Hell's Angels. That seems fair. It's a hardcover, was Random House. We have the genre is counterculture. I'm going to change that actually to history. Publication year is right. Language is correct. Features, it has a dust jacket. Was made in the US. No narrative type. I am going to put that in. It's nonfiction. Edition, they do have checked that it is book club edition. That is an option. It is not signed. They have that. Vintage, yes, it is vintage. There's no ex libris. It is personalized though, because they have their name written in it. 1960s literary movement, Gonzo, probably unnecessary, but he was a Gonzo writer, so we'll leave that go. And then my inventory location, so I know where to find this when it sells. I'm going to call it cover wear and minor damage on the dust jacket. Oops. Pardon my belly rumbling if you can hear that through the mic. Otherwise, the book is in good condition with minimal shelf wear, and the pages are a little bit tanned. It shows a median sold price of $20. It only shows one, that one at $20 at acceptable. No dust jacket. I think that's probably undervalued. Oops. I'm going to do $74.99 and $50. Normally I wouldn't go that low, but there are some items kind of in that range. So, and I'd be happy again. I'm into this for 50 cents. If I made $50 on this, would I take that? Absolutely. It's 13.7 ounces plus the paper. We'll call it 15 ounces. So it'll still be under 1 pound. And boom, that's 3. That's not my normal pace. So 3 listings done there. Let's hop back into the chat here. I will close this out by answering any of these last questions, and then we'll call it a day for today. Thank you, as always, for anybody that came out today, spent a little bit of time here, that had questions, comments, shared their thoughts, and in some cases, their information on things that I did not know. I appreciate that very much. Let's see. Seen book listings where the main photo is the book with the dust jacket sitting next to the book. Do you ever do that for the main photo? Generally not. I do see that from time to time. I will usually just show it with the dust jacket on. And if the dust jacket is a little rough, then I'll just show a picture of the book by itself separately. That's just a personal choice. I don't really know if one is better than the other. I want to capture kind of all sides of the dust jacket anyway. So just having it sitting there, I'd still have to take all those pictures. So it's just easier for me to just kind of knock it all out. Big Dre, usually wake up at 5 a.m. when I'm working, but while I'm on disability, I wake up late. Sorry about the disability, but congratulations on the sleeping late. Busy Girl, eBay has always liked the listing written normal, no special characters. Right, I don't understand why people do that. I see it all the time. All kinds of special characters. Like I said, the little squiggly lines to separate things. A lot of times I won't even put a comma in, or like in that case, I don't believe I even put the word by to separate the title from the author. I view all of those things kind of as keywords. So by is not a relevant keyword. So I'll leave it out. Again, personal preference. Don't know that there's a right or a wrong way to do it. That's just how I do it. Den Decor Tipo, here's a question on preference. How do you choose a listing to copy? I'll almost always take either the top of the search result or the highest sold price in comps. I generally just take the one whose title looks closest to what I'm going to do. My search is already set up by default to show me current listings, lowest price plus shipping first. So I can kind of see where the floor is on the pricing. And if there's a bunch of them, I generally don't even go look at solds. If there's already 20 of them that are all at or around $10, that's where the market is. So that's where I'm going to go. So I'll just try to pick the one that looks like at least the title is the closest to what I would use, so that I'm not having to retype a whole bunch of stuff in the title. I'm going to edit and change most of the item specifics anyway, so I don't get too hung up on where, again, this is just me, where that item fell in the search or in the sold comps, or what it's even necessarily what its value was, other than to make sure it's the same book, so I'm not pricing it incorrectly. But in terms of just copying the information over, just trying to find the one that's closest to what I would do, try to save myself a couple of seconds. Sissy Moore, no, I would do the same thing. Lindy Moo, same as you on what I consider sloppiness. Yes, I talked about it the other day. So many bad listings, where I had one yesterday where the title was correct in the item title, but when you went to the item specifics were for a completely different book, different author, different title, different year, different public. Nothing was right. Why would you do that to yourself? As a seller, you've made your job so much more difficult by not taking that extra, 30 seconds to look at those things and make sure they're correct, especially if you're doing what I just did and copying someone else's listing to use as kind of the base for your listing. Take the time to make sure that it's right before you publish it, because otherwise you're just, in my opinion, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're certainly making your job a lot harder than it needs to be. Big Dre, glad I keep my storage unit in order because my wife said it's easier for her to pick and pack orders as she's been running the business while I'm recovering. And that's true. Even if you're doing it all yourself, having that organization, if you've got more than a handful of listings, if I could give you another unsolicited tip this week, come up early. If you're new to selling, figure out how you want to do inventory tracking, how you want to keep track of stuff in tubs, in bags, in boxes, on a shelf, however you're going to do it, so that you can find items quickly and efficiently, and so that you don't lose things. So many sellers start off and they think, I'm only going to have 10 or 15 items, and I know they're all going to be on this shelf. And the next thing you know, you got 100 items, and now you're having to look through a whole bunch of stuff to find it. I label, I've talked about it before. I have a shelf. It's a 4 by 6 foot shelf. It has 5 shelves on it. That shelf location may be shelf A, and I'll have bin A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, and the items that go into those, that is the custom SKU that goes on that listing in eBay, so that when I sell it, I know right where to go in my warehouse to find that item. Whatever system works for you, some kind of alphanumeric system is what works for me. To label your inventory bins so that you know where you put the stuff, again, so you can find it quickly and so you don't lose anything, because there's nothing worse than getting a sale and then you can't find it and you have to cancel it. Chuck Witt, would it help to put both Hells without the apostrophe and Hells in the title for search purposes? I don't know. I feel like when I search on eBay, whether I put the apostrophe in or not, I feel like it returns me results both ways anyway. So I just do it because I'm a stickler for the accuracy. I don't know that it really makes that big a difference. It doesn't seem to me like eBay really differentiates with that kind of punctuation. If anybody knows for sure, let us know in the chat real quick before we go. But I don't do it that way. I usually put it, I've talked about it before. I see listings where the title of the book, like in the case of that one, for instance. So on the cover, it's even different than what's on the title page. So on the cover, it's Hell's Angels, the Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs. On the title page, it doesn't have that last part, of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs. Would it be helpful to have that in there? Probably. If you tried to put all that in item specifics, it's going to be too many characters. eBay limits how much you can put in there, so you wouldn't fit it all in there anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of times where people will change the title, the order of the title. And again, I just feel like that makes it harder for people to find. I try to put them in exactly like they appear on the actual item itself. Again, that's just me, but that's the way I do it. Fern Flips, thank you. I definitely learned something. Awesome. I appreciate that. I hope people can put this stuff to good use. As usual, my brain is full of new eBay strategies. Looking forward to next Wednesday's session. Thank you. We will be here next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Chuck, thank you. Always thank you for your time and knowledge. I appreciate that. Den Decor, thanks again. Thank you. Again, thank you to everybody who came out today and spent a little time. I say a little time, we're almost an hour and 22 minutes. I appreciate everybody that came out today. My doggy probably wants to go for a walk, so it's time to sell. Thanks, guys.
You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.